My name is Tina Bott, and I'm an assistant professor at MacEwan University. I typically teach organic chemistry, but that branches out for me into some upper level medicinal chemistry and advanced OChem courses too. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about today was something I've tried in my medicinal chemistry course twice, one in person and one virtually this past winter, and incorporating infographics as a way for students to present. And particularly today, I wanted to highlight how I thought it worked this year in a virtual setting. So to give you a little bit of background on the course, it's a third-year course. It's an introduction to medicinal chemistry. Students are expected to have second-year OChem, and then they come from different backgrounds. I get students from a lot of biology students that are interested in psychology and medicine associated with that. But the main background that they have to have is intro organic. So the course basically takes them through the introductory process of how pharmaceutical companies design drugs through the target selection to finding lead molecules, medicinal chemistry, and studies. So we focus on small molecule drugs, not large biologics or anything like that. That would be a bit over the scope of this. So it's a relatively small course. It's lecture-based typically. There's 40 students. It's normally in a regular kind of in-person class. And this year I did asynchronous lectures with synchronous tutorial sessions. So aside from the core material, one of the main things I usually do with this course is have some form of independent projects. So students work on their information literacy, as well as different ways of presenting material and not just being tested on the material. So each student is required to do an independent project with a drug of their choosing. There's usually I have some outline of what drug molecules should be chosen and guidelines for how they choose, but every student picks a different molecule. And there are two components of this project. One is a literature review paper that they will hand in at the very end of the course. And the other one, which I've done, is an infographic. So it's due earlier in the term, and it's evaluated by both the instructor or myself and also by their peers. So the goal of this is to have two components that are geared towards different audiences. So why an infographic, right? So I was first introduced to this a couple years ago. Jackie Stewart at UBC talked about this at one of the CSC conferences. I've seen a lot of presentations in the nursing department using infographics. And I thought it would be a good way to try and incorporate a presentation element that doesn't include have 40 students or more presenting towards the class in person. It eliminates some of the issues associated with group work and having a presentation together. And it really focuses on a lot of the things that you want students to do in association with information literacy. So you think about when they're picking their molecule of choice, they need to learn to search and read scientific information, to digest that information, evaluate what's important. And for an infographic, there's an importance of summarizing, organizing, and communicating complex information to a particular audience. The other very important thing for an asynchronous course, if that's what you're doing, is that they don't need to be in person at a specific time or place in order for this process to work. And again, why an infographic? Well, we've shown them so many things. And as instructors, I know that we're always trying to have more visuals in what we're doing because they don't want to just read off the text all the time. So what I found with infographics is that students can take all that complex information about a drug molecule and make it a lot more understandable. And my ultimate goal is when students have learned all the information about this course, they kind of neatly parcel it together on very specific drugs, and then their peers get to see, information about 40 different drugs that we didn't necessarily cover in our class, and it applies all of the information we've learned. So it's basically the idea of taking, all of the course content and applying it to one unique thing. And so every student should be able to read this information about the individual molecule and understand the context behind it. So again, I found this infographic because when you're talking about them, why wouldn't you use them? About the effectiveness and how people's brains process that information. So The short of it is visuals are going to aid in our impact of digesting that information, especially complex scientific information. So that's kind of the idea behind what I was trying to do. From a practical aspect, well, when students do this, you are generating PDF files or image files sometimes, but typically PDFs. They're easy to view, they're easy to send, they can be uploaded, they can be printed. If you have a hard copy of something, there's more time for constructive feedback, both as the instructor as well as if you want peer feedback. Because again, when we sit and watch a presentation, it's personally, I find it very difficult to focus on a student presentation and then also try to make notes for myself for later for marking purposes. It's nice to be able to go back and reflect on that information later. There's lots of free programs that are available. So I've just listed two here. Most of my students use something called PictoChart, which basically has infographic templates they can use. It has lots of different figures and images that they can use in terms of graphs, things that just go along with infographics. I was lucky enough to have one of our education developers, Kim Peacock at McEwen, helped me work through the resources and also came and spoke to my class and provided resources as well. But you could use, PowerPoint. You could use a lot of different programs. People can use Adobe. In the past, I let students do all kinds of different things. This time I tried to focus them just because I wanted something that was easy to view in a virtual setting. There are also really good drawing programs that are free. Most of us are familiar with, like ChemSketch and chemistry drawing programs, but BioRender is one that is really great for being able to draw biology-related images that students can use. And I have a good example at the end of a student who drew all of their own structures for their poster, and it looked really good. There is also lots of free information on infographics available online. I found several good resources with companies that design infographics. They have blog articles, examples, and there's lots of good, bad, and ugly examples of infographics you can go through with your students so they can get an idea of, what the good, bad, and ugly look like. Okay, so what was my preamble to my students? Well, first time I did this, I didn't have enough preamble. So I think I set myself up for a bit of a failure the first time around. But this year, especially being online, not being in class to talk about it the same way, I wanted to make sure I really set them up well to understand the task. So first I had a couple of readings for them to do before a tutorial session. I found some pretty good articles, the three listed here on, the purpose of infographics, how we can take a complex paper with a lot of data and present it visually and simplified, and how to design your infographic. So I actually found these quite useful. Students use them as well. I have the links to them at the end in case anyone's interested. Then I held a virtual session kind of during our regular time slot, telling students what the purpose of an infographic was, how do we create it from content that exists, how do we find resources, and then we went through examples, often comparing infographics for the same or similar information. What looked good, what are we drawn to when we see these things, are we looking at the right information, comparing those things. And then what I incorporated this time was a kind of small, if I want to refer to as a think, pair, share project where students got to practice. I'm running out of time, sorry. So what was the group project? Well, they were given an article by me, and they were supposed to organize the content using what I called the 3S framework, which was part of their article. So they select, split, and sequence it. And then they were supposed to evaluate the infographics using some examples from their peers. So they were asked to do this separately and then come together as a group to do it. So I just here have some examples of the group work. So they were given one of them was an article looking at the use of over-the-counter NSAIDs and how that affected family medicine. So here students took a 9-page article and summarized it and outlined it on how an infographic would look without pictures. And I thought they did a really good job of being able to do this. And then with their own personal infographic, they took their own drug and all the information on that, and they made real infographics. And so there's two examples here. The one on the right, you can see at the bottom left were how the drug worked. That was all done in BioRender. I see I'm out of time. Sorry, I'll just go to my last page. Couple more examples of what student work looked like. And then in the end, the lessons learned was that students did a great job. The group exercise was really valuable in helping them understand the point. And in future, I would just like to make sure I put more time between the group activity and the final so we can go over it as a class and maybe create a class rubric. And just thanking the educators, the students that let me use their work today. And Jackie Stewart, I don't know if she's here, but for some inspiration to do this a few years ago.